here's the limitations of the 16 personalities and other MBTI indicators, Myers-Briggs type indicators quizzes, and that is, it's going to tell you your preferences out of these 4 choices. And that doesn't mean that those are your natural skills and abilities or tendencies in terms of how you think. And what we discover is there are some biases in the descriptions that lean people towards certain types that we could call aspirational. They're types we would like to be. And that is what I mean by saying that it's not accurate. And there are some really exciting new methods of objectively typing people that are coming much closer to understanding the richness of what Carl Jung wanted us to understand about the cognitive functions. So you get 4 letters from the MBTI quizzes that tell you whether you see yourself and prefer to be extroverted or introverted, sensing or intuitive, thinking or feeling, and perceiving or judging. It's important to know that we all can do all of that. We all do all of that. We may prefer one over the other when we are thinking about ourselves, but we may see ourselves inaccurately, particularly through what, again, we value or think is better or wish we were good at. And we kind of have blind spots as to what we really are like. So the 16 personalities can be divided into what are called temperaments. And that is somewhat helpful to, once you get your score, figure out whether it is accurate by kind of considering, are you in the right category of 4, although this has limitations as well. So we have those 4 types that prefer sensing and perceiving, and those typically are the most in the moment, spontaneous, artistic, or athletic, or we could call them artisans, and that's SP. The 4 that prefer sensing and judging are the traditionalists because they like to make decisions and stick to them, and they want to keep the status quo. They like traditions. They are conservative, typically speaking. Then we have the intuitive thinkers that are the NTs, and they're thought of as being more the scientists because they are generating possibilities through their intuition and or seeing connections, and then they're logically evaluating that data. Whereas the final group is the intuitive feelers, and those are the NF. Those are usually more good at language or thought of as being poetic. They're very verbal. They can lean towards being more codependent because they value harmony. And they are maybe more empathic because they can guess at what other people are feeling. Now, so you should be able to see a couple biases here. The biggest one is intuition over sensing. So no matter whether you are sensing or not, the tests will, and the descriptions will make intuitive people seem smarter, and that just isn't the case. There's different types of intelligence. So here's a little bit more about, so the test and the description are biased towards intuition. Also, when they've done some large research, 75% of at least American population is extroverted, so there is a bias towards that. Although when we look at cognitive functions, it's not really about the basic definition of extrovert versus introvert. It's which of your cognitive functions you display and which you keep to yourself. In that research, there also was a tendency to show the only gender difference being among thinking and feeling, because men are socialized to value logic and express it. Women are socialized to value harmony and default to that. So even if someone has the opposite preference expected of their gender, they usually will be closer to the middle because they feel that social pressure to do what's expected of them. So the cognitive functions focus on the two central choices, which are how you perceive data and how you make a decision based on it, and that is sensing versus intuition and thinking versus feeling. Then we get to look at dividing each of those into orientation. So we have extroverted sensing and introverted sensing, and so on. Extroverted thinking, extroverted intuition, introverted intuition, extroverted feeling, and introverted feeling. You will always have one of those functions that is introverted and one that is extroverted. So if your letters come out as an E, an extrovert, what that actually means is your dominant function, the thing that you're the best at, you actually extrovert. It's visible and it observes or relates to the external world. If you're an introvert, your dominant will actually be less visible because you keep it to yourself and it's an internal personal process. So you're actually going to look more like an extrovert in your second function. I'll explain that when I give you an example here coming up. So what is the difference? This is something I would send you to go learn about cognitive functions, but in the very briefest explanation, someone who has strong extroverted sensing can be very present in the moment, can really notice a lot of details, is usually in their body, liking to be physical or do something physical that's right here, right now. They take things as they are. What it is what it is. That's extroverted sensing. Introverted sensing tends to take those impressions of the world and catalog them and have a more past orientation where they compare what's happening now to many past incidences, whether that's a picture or an auditory or some kind of, cataloging. And so they tend to be more sentimental and nostalgic. Extroverted thinkers are concerned with how things work and do things work for everyone in the external world. They also might be bossy, telling people what things, how they should be and what things, how they should go because of how logically they should work. An intuitive thinker is much more concerned with what are my opinions, what's my knowledge, what does it mean personally to me through the arc of my life. I'm probably not going to tell you about that. And so if you have extroverted sensing, you're going to have introverted thinking or introverted feeling because of that flip-flop, extrovert to introvert. If you have introverted sensing, you're going to have extroverted thinking or extroverted feeling as a combo, again, because you've got one introverted and one extroverted. All right. So then if you have extroverted intuition, you are looking at everything outside of you and generating possibilities and making connections. It's very expansive, like possibilities, just out of the box, very rapid thinking and you're sharing it and people may have trouble following you unless they also have extroverted intuition somewhere in their personality. Introverted intuition is where you are taking all these possibilities and hunches and connections, but then narrowing down those possibilities as much as possible to coming up with conclusions. And it has a very future orientation of predicting outcomes. If you have extroverted intuition, you're going to have introverted thinking or introverted feeling because of that extrovert-introvert pair in your cognitive functions. If you have introverted intuition, you're going to have extroverted thinking, extroverted feeling, one of those. And so then that brings us to the final dyad, which is extroverted feelers tend to notice what is going on with everyone outside of them. And they have skills at finessing a group. So they're a good host. They know all their social skills, nuances. And I used to think that they were the more empathetic. And it turns out it may be a different style, that the introverted feeler also has an empathy. But it is more like the introverted feeler understands what they feel, or they want to understand it, and they need to do that alone. And once they have a real deep understanding of something that hurt them, then they can extrapolate to others not wanting them to have the same pain. So they will fight for the underdog who has, because they don't want anyone else to experience what they went through. But they won't necessarily display the same social ability to smooth things over. In fact, they're keeping their feelings to themselves until they may suddenly blow, and then they won't be as graceful with the expression of their feelings. Okay, I already had that. So here's 2 types. Let's look at the INFP and the INFJ. So introverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving versus the introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging person. So you would think that they are very similar because they only have one letter different. So you would think they're both NFs, they're both into harmony, they're both into language, they're both potentially codependent, and just one of them prefers to be more scheduled than the other one. When actually there's more difference between those 2 types when you look at cognitive functions. So an INFP has extroverted intuition that is visible, with introverted feeling they keep to themselves. So they are flexible, generating all these possibilities, looking at connections, and then filtering that through their values that are very important to them, what they like and don't like. They are artistic because of their sense of, what's beautiful, their sense of aesthetics. Whereas the INFJ is an introverted intuitive with extroverted feeling. And so they tend to be more caretaking of others, more formal, maybe less likely to seem eccentric, and their intuition is internal, and they may score as an INTJ because introverted intuition is so mental, and sort of honing down towards things. Anyway, there's a lot of other differences between an INFP and an INFJ, but you wouldn't know about those opposite orientations of their intuition and feeling without looking at the cognitive functions. So I think this is my final pick. Yes. What I wanted to then say is, of the 16 personalities, 4 of them have a dominant sensing orientation. 2 of those extroverted and 2 of those introverted. 4 of them have a dominant thinking cognitive function. 2 of them extroverted and 2 of them introverted. The 4 of them have dominant intuition. 2 of those are introverted intuition and 2 of them are extroverted intuition. And 4 are dominant feelers, 2 introverted feelers and 2 extroverted feelers. So in that last category, you'll notice that actually the INFP is more similar to the ISFP. They both have this dominant introverted feeling, which is this sense that their values, what they like and dislike, is the most important thing in their life. They must be authentic. They care more about, their own sense of the world through that lens of values. And then the INFP is collecting information to go through that lens of their values from extroverted intuition, whereas the ISFP is collecting information in this moment from extroverted sensing. Then we were talking about the INFJ, which is over on the bottom left, as a dominant intuitive, and it actually is more similar to an INTJ, even though they're different temperaments, because they're both dominant intuitives. Anyway, take the tests and then assume it's wrong and unpack what is true out of it. And usually you might be one letter off, but that letter will change your cognitive function stack. Anyway, that's it.